Rightio, guys. Welcome back to GameChangers Podcast, Season 2, Episode 3. And as promised, we got the great man, Andy Raymond. How you been, Bella? And what have you been up to these days? Because I know, I don't know if it's accurate, but reading like a little bit about your info on Wiki and that, it said you sort of moved away from Fox when they did cuts. Is that right? Or
yeah, mate. They when COVID hit and the rugby league got suspended for what might have been 8 weeks. I got a phone call the Monday after it got suspended and got let go after 23 years. So, mate, got to say, a little bit of a shock. It was really weird, but mate, doing my own thing now, and look, it's really different. I enjoy my life, and I've enjoyed what I've done. But for 30 years, I've had 3 bosses telling me when I'm working, what I'm doing, what game, what they expect. Basically, they're giving me my roster and schedule professionally and personally. And now I'm the one making decisions, and I set my roster and decide when I'm working. And it's for an older bloke, it's a massive adjustment. So I'm actually still I'm not trying to master it. I'm still trying to feel my way around it. We lost the big fella. I think we might have lost Big Shawnee. No, I didn't even touch anything. No, I didn't touch a thing. You'll blame me, though. Big rap on Shawnee from Greg Bird. If anyone's listening, I don't know if you've heard my Greg Bird interview on the Unfiltered podcast on Andy Raymond Unfiltered, but Greg reckons Shawnee was the best he's seen, which I thought was a massive rap, a huge rap actually, from Greg Bird, a guy that's played for New South Wales, played for Australia, got himself into some Barney rubble along the way, but huge rap from Greg Bird. Shawnee, come back. I'm going to turn my phone on and go to Insta to see if you're trying to message me there. Of course, my phone doesn't want to turn on. If anyone's watching or listening, why don't you send a message, say g'day, ask me a question. We'll take over while Sean's not here. What's happening on Instagram? Oh, I think that might be Shawnee saying he's just lost connection. Trying to get it back. No worries, big fella. I thought you might have been trying to contact me on Instagram. I can see you. There we go. I can see you from last week. It's a bit weird. Wonder if you got the same shirt on. We'll try and figure that out shortly. I know Greg Bird gave you a good rap, but you're a better sort than Birdie too. Just saying. Just saying.
You there?
Hey, there he is.
On the day that I need it most, with the main man, and I dropped out of the hotspot, so I'm back onto my 5G. So we'll see how we go with this one.
Awesome, buddy.
Yeah, we'll see how we go. All right. So tell us a little bit about your background. Where's the family from, brother? Because we don't see a lot of that sort of stuff when you're doing the mainstream stuff. And where'd you grow up? And where do you call home now?
Mate, I grew up in northwest Sydney, about 10 minutes north of Parramatta and Parramatta Stadium, in the North Rocks, Carlingford area. Mum and Dad actually took me home to the same house that Mum still lives in to this very day. Wonderful area. It was a really good area to grow up in, mate. I grew up in the era. I'm an old fart, so I grew up in the era where in the winter months you got home from school, you went down the park and played footy with 6 guys or 600 guys. In the summer months, you'd get home from school, you go up the park and play cricket with, another 100 blokes, or you'd ride your pushies, and the only rule was when the street lights come on, time to go home. There was no mobile phones, there was no computer games, so you were out every single day doing something. And mate, I had the most wonderful childhood and couldn't have been blessed with anything more. Wonderful family, wonderful friends, wonderful neighbours. I now call home the Sunshine Coast in Queensland.
Nice.
My now wife is she's a Queenslander. She's a Queenslander. What am I doing? So yeah, she's a Queenslander, and she convinced me to move up here. We've been up here about 12 or 13 years. Absolutely love it. Really do. It's very relaxed. With my work, I travel more than any person possibly should or could. So I still get into the cities and the big cities, and you get your big city vibe. But after 2 days, mate, I'm ready to head back to the little Sunshine Coast and no one around. It's pretty cool.
So when you were doing the gig with Fox, and obviously you're still covering a lot of the boxing and that as well, you travel down. So I think I put this in one of the questions later, but like, what did you do? Did they give you a schedule week to week, or was it a month in advance? Or
no, it was pretty much a fortnight in advance most of the times. And if I was here, or when I was living in Sydney, I would do pretty much the same thing. I'd leave on a Friday and go and do the boxing in Melbourne. I'd fly to Canberra and do the footy on Saturday. I'd drive to Sydney, back to Sydney, and then go to Newcastle or wherever for Monday night footy. So it was pretty similar from here. I'd fly out of here on a Friday and get home on a Tuesday. It was ridiculous. And look, wow. When you're a young fella, sensational fun, and every night was an experiment, and every night was fun, and you'd wake up with a hangover, and you'd wake up tired, and it didn't matter. Yeah. But over the last 10 years, that personal enjoyment, that probably left. You'd fly in, you'd land, you'd pick up your hire car, you go to the hotel, have a quick shower, put your suit on, go to the footy, come back to the hotel, get room service, go to sleep, and do it again. And that just happens as you get older. You're not going out to the casino, and you're not running amok. I still loved what I did. I still loved the footy. I still loved the boxing, but mate, just the batteries just wouldn't allow me to go out and run amok with the likes of your mate Greg Bird 3 times a week. Just too old for that. Mel Gibson? What did Danny Glover say? I'm too old for this shit. Lethal Weapon.
So in a way, with the Fox Sports stuff, like when it happened around that COVID period, was that a bit of a blessing in disguise, or did you take it as a bit of a kick in the ass because you'd given him so many years too, Andy? You know, and watching your brother, I always remembered how you connected with the boys on field and that too. You know, coming off at halftime or before and after games. You know, it looked like you formed a really close bond with a lot of the boys.
Mate,
you know,
and a lot of the guys that I've met over 33 years doing this are, my best mates, and we speak several times a week after all these years. It was I didn't see it as a blessing. I saw it as a huge kick in the ass. It absolutely blindsided me. There was no prior warning. I'd been told by the boss, mate, you got a job for life. We love you, blah, blah, blah. And they turn around and do this, mate. But shit happens, like stuff like that, it happens. And there was a lot worse people in COVID off than me. A lot of people lost their lives or lost loved ones. And that's just terrible. What got me is there was no personal side to the interaction between us. Basically, I got a phone call. The boss sat in the human resources office, and the human resources lady, who I'd never met, read a letter saying, basically ticking off the legal bits that she had to tick off. And the phone call lasted 7 minutes, and that was it. So, mate, I saw it as a huge kick in the guts. The game has grown so much, and so much surrounds, or so much of the promotion and publicity revolves around mental health. And we saw last year with Paul Green really ramming that message home. But the fact that the boss of Fox or the boss of the NRL couldn't pick up the phone and say, hey, how you doing? Are you all right? Mate, you know what? That still pisses me off. It really does. I am a really basic person. I'm loyal and I'm honest. Everyone gets one chance, and you get treated like gold until you screw me. And when you screw me, you're off for life. That's
man's man, brother. Hey? You're a man's man. You're a man's man.
Yeah, well, it also might be the wrong way of going about it. I don't know, but that's just how I was. That's how I was brought up. So for them to show no personal side, mate, that bites me more than the fact that I lost my job, to be honest.
Yeah, and do you feel like you can't take anyone's word anymore because of that decision? Because you gave so much to them people, they became your family, but they still come back and do something like this. Like, do you have trust issues now, and you just, you're working for yourself now, so you can make your own decisions?
Yeah, I get to make my own decisions now, and I don't know if that's always a good thing, mate. No trust issues, and mate, I just treat people on their merit. And I don't care if I'm not impressed if you've played 300 games of footy and you're immortal, or you're the local tradie and we'll have a couple of beers together. It just doesn't bother me. In this era, we're talking about, and so many headlines, Shawnee, he's gay, he's straight, he's white, he's black. I don't differentiate any of that. I couldn't care less. I don't care what sex you are, what colour you are, what nationality you are. I've got two groups of people, good people and bad people. And everyone groups into that. That's as simple as my brain can compute it, mate.
Yeah, good man. Now you've covered so many sports in your media career, brother. I'm interested to know, and the viewers will be as well. But what sport did you play as a young fella, and where?
Mate, played rugby league, boxed,
Yeah.
and raced BMX. Actually, world's worst child cricketer. Terrible.
What batting or bowling?
Both. So they threw me at wicket keeper to try and get me involved. Mate, even with the gloves on, I'd be dropping things and letting them go. Mate, I had nothing. I started with nothing. I ended with nothing. And it was, one of the least desirable junior cricket careers ever, but loved every minute of it. Mate, we were into our BMX as kids, and this was at a time in the early to mid-'80s. BMX took off in Australia, and I've never since seen anything grow like it. There was like 1,000 kids at a race meeting on a Friday night out in Western Sydney, and they would roll through it. Then you would go and race Saturday morning somewhere, Saturday night somewhere, and Sunday arvo somewhere. It was insane. And we actually travelled over to the States probably 5 or 6 times over to the US racing. So that took up a lot of time, some really good memories.
So you were pretty good at that, at the BMX stuff, eh?
Yeah, mate, went okay. It was good. I actually, a couple of years ago, I got my old racing bike, out of the shed at Mum and Dad's house, and mate, rust, cobwebs, everything, and gave it the almighty clean up, and got help by a few companies to clean it up because I'm useless with my hands. So had it re-chromed and the parts that couldn't be salvaged, I sourced. Replica old school parts, and it came up an absolute treat. It was really, really cool to do. Good little job.
You still get on it, or you got young ones that use it?
No, mate. I wouldn't and couldn't get on it. I'm accident prone. It just wouldn't end with a storm. I know exactly how it would end, and it's me back in hospital again.
Yeah. How far did you go with your own sporting career? You just touched on the BMX stuff. What about the boxing and the footy? Because that's where I think a lot of people have seen you over the years as well. Like,
mate, with the boxing, back in the day, and this is mid-'80s, I trained with a former national champion called Trevor King down at North Parramatta, and he used to host the Parramatta Eels every so often. And we would train down there. Trevor was a neighbour of ours, and we'd train down there, and it was unofficially a police boys club.
Yeah, okay.
It was sort of linked. And they used to have inter-club challenges where you would travel to Gladesville, or they would come to you, or Penrith. And I won my first 5. And they were only gym fights, but I won my first 5 amateur gym fights as a 12 or 13-year-old. I got smashed in the 6th one. This sucks.
And never went back?
Never back. I did go back, but I never fought again. I just trained. Yeah. And look, terrific training. And in my generation, mate, every second kid learned how to box. They learned how to train. They learned how to box. There wasn't the million social media outlets, and there wasn't the computer games. So it was a really good little resource, and a really good little learning curve. Geez, it shuts people up in a real hurry, because you quickly figure out that little bloke next to you who doesn't look like much, he might well kick your ass. So keep your mouth shut and your eyes open and your hands up.
Yeah, definitely. I grew up out in a little place called Brewarrina, Andy. I don't know if you know too much about it, out near Burke, and they had a run of titles every year. So a lot of the Western clubs, police boys clubs, all their fighters would congregate at Bree once a year, and we all look forward to it. it was unbelievable seeing all those fighters. But
Mate,
you know,
good fun and good little talents they all were too.
yeah, definitely. We had a young. There were a lot of Australian champions out of the Brewarrina club as well. You know, a couple
Cool.
of Fergusons and Clarks. Yeah. There was a fellow from Burke called Ashley Thorne who fought Jeff Fennick in an Australian title bout as well.
There you go.
Some good little boxers come out of that way. Now, I didn't know too much about this until I did a bit of research, but your old man was pretty big in the motor sport circles, brother. Is that where you got the passion or the drive to sort of extinguish a career or start a career in media? Or was it because you enjoyed the sports
it was
so
never
much?
was never forced on me, Sean, but I think it was sort of, you know, Dad was on TV and Dad was commentating live at the speedways. And I think it just came really naturally to me.
Yeah.
That said, we lived not far from Channel 7 in Sydney. So when I was a young bloke, and when I was free, I'd go up to Channel 7, and it ended up on a weekend, I would go up after footy on Saturday and after BMX or before BMX on a Sunday. And I was just there to watch, learn and listen. And I'm a good listener. I always have been a good listener. So I would go up and I'd make coffees and I'd get lunches. I'd do the printer stuff for them. Then I'd sit down with the journalists or the editors or the directors or the producers. I'd just sit behind them and watch. And then that developed into, I would be able to ask questions afterwards on why you said that and why you did that. So I think I showed a real willingness to learn. Look, we've all had an experience with a work experience kid that actually doesn't want to be there, that falls asleep in the back of the car or whatever. That wasn't me. I was really keen. And that sort of led on pretty quickly to, you know, I really like this. I'm going to give this a go and I'm going to start at the bottom. And start at the bottom, I did. It was still coffees, lunches, printer, overnight shift, whatever they needed. I made sure I was the first one in at work every day and the last one to leave. And always learning, always listening, and always asking questions, mate. So that's how it started. But very proud of what Dad achieved. You know, he got an OAM. He's in the Australian Speedway Hall of Fame, the Australian Supercar or Touring Car Hall of Fame. Very proud and only half the bloke he was, to be honest.
Yeah, right. And your old man's still alive, brother?
No, we lost Dad about 3.5 years ago, which has left a pretty big hole because I think we all go through that cycle, mate. You know, they're your dad, and then you get to that age, it's not that cool to be seen with your dad and your mum, and you go full circle and you realise, shit, Dad's my best mate. And so, a bit of a hole there, but no different from anyone else that's lost a loved one. But anyone that has lost a loved one will, you know, sort of know where I'm headed with this. It's
brother.
Yeah, tough.
And it's hard too, because what you talk about them times when you feel like you're too cool to hang, and then you try and play catch up later in life, and you realise you take a lot of it for granted too,
Yeah, you do take a lot of it for granted, and that's I think, you know, it's part of the learning and maturing process for all us young blokes. But if you're younger and you're listening to this, don't take it for granted. I'll give you another one. My mum's 80 at the moment, lives in Sydney, and I go down once a month and I'll do a week with her or 2 weeks. And she's been a bit crook over the last year or two. So I've done a 6-week and a 4-week stretch with her. Now, there's a reason that I don't live with my 80-year-old mother anymore. And there are frustrating times. There are difficult times. There might be repeated stories. And I always just take a deep breath and think, enjoy your time, mate. Don't get frustrated. Don't get the shits.
Yep.
Enjoy your time and put a smile on their face.
Yeah, definitely, brother. What's the journey been like for you throughout your career? I mean, you covered all those sports we talked about. What do you reckon out of all of them, what was the most enjoyable to cover for you, brother? And why?
I tell you what, my dad and my uncle are absolute motor racing tragics. I really enjoy it, but I haven't got that motorsport bug like I do with the rugby league or the boxing. But I did 4 years as the pit lane reporter on Channel 7 when the V8s returned in the early 90s.
Yeah.
To stand on pit road at the start of the Bathurst 1000, mate, that is something else. The sound, the smell, the energy, the testosterone, it is red hot. 40 V8s revving at 6,000.
Good.
Off they go. That was really cool. I've covered World Cups. I've covered Test matches. I've covered maybe 40.
Did you do Super Rugby? Super Rugby too?
I did Super Rugby for a year, which was an eye-opener because I wasn't a rugby guy, but it was an opportunity to give them a look at how I went on camera. So I worked my ass off and studied my ass off and then covered my ass. And look, I really enjoyed the Super Rugby. It was only a year, but thoroughly enjoyed it. Two occasions probably sit above anything else. And that was commentating Danny Green versus Roy Jones Jr. And Greenie won in the first round. And Danny and I, terrific mates still to this day. Sold out Kudos Bank Arena in Sydney, a Hall of Famer in Roy Jones. Danny did the work and I did the talking, and we matched that together for a really special moment in Australian sport. The other one, as I said earlier, I grew up near Parramatta Stadium. I'm an Eels tragic. Absolutely love them. And in 2009, when Jared Hayne that red hot run, I got to call Paris St George week 1 of the semi-finals, and Hayne scored that try.
Yeah.
And so, mate, if you put yourself in my shoes, you're getting to call your team in a semi-final. The only thing better would be getting to call your team in a grand final. But, there's two moments that really stand out, Sean.
Yeah. Who's been some of the best personalities that you've interviewed or even or ever sort of been around over the years? And on the flip side, who have been the most difficult that you've sort of come across as well?
Difficult, Wayne Bennett. Just, it's a game to him, or he thinks it's clever doing what he does, to interviewers or to the media. And what these guys have got to remember, if I'm asking a question to Wayne Bennett or Greg Bird or Jeff Fennick, they're not responding to me. They're responding to the crowd that's watching. So be a smart ass to me. I couldn't give a shit. But you look like a dickhead. And Wayne's meant to be this, all-conquering, best bloke in the world, helps everyone, has got a great word for everyone. There has been moments where Wayne has shown me a really nice side, but there's been a lot of moments where I just think, not for me. There's most of the players, 99% of the players have been great. There are so many different personalities. A guy like Wally Lewis, who was as polarising as anyone. If you live north of the Tweed, best bloke, best player in the world. If you live south of the Tweed, bloke's an arsehole and he can't play footy. What a terrific bloke, mate.
Yeah.
I spent 1997 travelling with Wally when Super League first came in. It was my first year at Fox Sports. It was Wally's first year at Fox Sports, and we travelled basically as a tag team everywhere. And we did a lot of the Western Reds games, and the Western Reds games was Saturday, I'm going to say 5 o'clock. So they would fly us over on Friday morning because the Saturday flights were too late. They'd fly us over Friday morning, and we basically had 30 hours till kickoff. Well, we'd go straight to the bar, and mate, if the Hilton in Perth could tell stories, Wally and I'd be crucified. There was one night that King and I got home at like 5 a.m, and we started wrestling in the elevator. And we kept wrestling, and the elevator took us up, and we're wrestling. And we were wrestling so we didn't get out of the elevator. So the elevators come back down, and we're still wrestling. And the doors have opened, and there is one of the flight crews has arrived in early morning flight, and they're wanting to go to bed, go to their room. And there's me and Wally looking up. There's torn shirts and hair everywhere.
How good.
So, just a different side to guys that, you don't necessarily see. You're a mate of Birdie's. And if you know the real Greg Bird, you stand by him. He's a very decent bloke, a very polite, very respectful bloke.
Yeah.
He's a bit like me in the fact he'll give you one chance. You screw up that chance and you're off. And Greg's had his moments along his career, but a terrific bloke. And if I needed something tomorrow, and I don't speak to Greg all that regularly, but if I rang him and said, mate, I'm in a spot, he'd say, okay, well, what do you need?
Yeah.
And this is
100%.
this is a bloke the crowds booed only because of the jersey he was wearing. A lot of them are terrific blokes.
Yeah. Give us an idea, and you touched on this a little bit, but we do this when we talk to, like obviously we're talking to players and stewards, gear stewards, old Johnny Thomas from the Knights, and development officers, and just to give people an insight into the different sides of the game as well. But you touched on it a little bit earlier, but give us a little bit of an idea of a company like Fox, as big as they are. Could you request games like you said? Did you have like little crews that you would stick together with week to week? You talked about you and Wally there then, but were you given, like you talked about schedule 2 weeks in advance, but could you pick your games? Could you pick the crew you wanted to work with, or they just picked it based on what they thought might work best for the team and the viewers?
Yeah, no, they would. I can't speak for them now, but what they used to do, they would prioritise the importance of the game and put who they thought would work best on that game. And you weren't with a set crew all the time. Maybe the only occasion it was a set crew was when we had Monday night footy, and every Monday night footy it was Wazza Smith commentating, Laurie Daly, Greg Alexander in commentary, and me on the sideline. But that was probably the only slot that was regular. I would work with any of the Fox guys back in the day. They were all terrific, and I enjoyed working with, different combinations and seeing everyone. There were times where You could request a Sydney game as opposed to travelling if you had a valid reason.
Yeah.
But the bigger a company gets, like Fox, the less hassles they need. So I really tried to minimise that. I didn't think it was fair. They're paying me. They're putting their trust in me. If they assign me to the Brisbane game and it means I've got to miss something in Sydney, well, that's
so be it.
Yeah, so be it, mate.
What's been the biggest challenge? And you talked to us a little bit about like getting that kick in the ass from Fox, but how do you deal with something like that, brother? And who do you turn to? Like who was your mentor along the way? Did you speak a lot to those guys? Sort of who was your family around you in that time when you needed them most?
The family was great, and they got part of the story, or part of the part of the love. A lot of it with my wife. I've got another late friend. He sadly no longer with us, and he was based in Singapore, and he helped me out unbelievably. A terrific guy. That's our conversations are very sorely missed. I wouldn't get emotional or upset over the fact that it happened, but if I told you that I got, between text message, social media messages, phone calls, if I had 1,000 contacts, and from people I didn't know, from families that would say, Dad used to watch you, we used to watch you as kids, Dad's no longer here, but we still watch you with our kids, and we're really going to miss you. Mate, I would break down in tears for 6 months hearing stuff like that. So, mate, it was a tough time, but everything happens for a reason, and we move on, mate. The world doesn't stop for anyone.
That's right. Have you got a desire to get back on the screen with one of the big companies, or are you content with doing what you're doing at Unfiltered? And let the viewers know about Unfiltered too, because you got different series. So I wanted to ask you about that too.
Yeah, no, I'm doing work with Triple M again this year on the radio. I don't know if the radio is me or brings out the best in me, but I did a couple of trial games on the weekend and relaxed myself more than I have, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was cool, and I was me, and I was a bit naughty and a bit cheeky. You still get your stats, you still get the players and what's happening, but I cut loose a little bit. So I enjoyed that. I would never say never to anything, because that's just, you can't roadblock anything in such a small field as the media. But I'm really enjoying the Unfiltered, and Unfiltered doesn't mean you get to swear all the time, although you can. It just means there's no filter, there's no rules. If I want to do 20 podcasts this week, I can do 20 podcasts this week. If I want to do one, I can do one. If I want to talk about this or interview this guy, I can do that. There's just no rules with social media and with podcasts. So I'm really enjoying it. We've got a couple of different series. All of them have been really well received. They're well researched. They're well put together, and they're all different. They're really different. But the thing that I'm really proud of with the podcast is the way I do it. None of the episodes or none of the interviews ever date. So I don't talk about this week or last week in terms of footy. All of the stories are timeless. So literally you can go on and download the lot and start making your way through, and you would never know that the interview was 2 years ago, because it seems like it was today.
Yeah. Where can the viewers find it? Where can the people find it, brother?
You can just search Andy Raymond Unfiltered on whatever podcast app you listen to, depending on what phone or iPad or computer. But Andy Raymond Unfiltered, I think it's on all of them. And like, subscribe, and enjoy.
How do you do all the things you do, like in terms of the apps? Because I've got no idea how to do it. I just do it for fun. We call it Game Changers, brother, because I feel that there's not a lot of game changers in the NRL these days.
Yeah.
A lot of it is robotic, a lot of it's all structured footy. We'd get ripped off the field doing the things that we did back in the day, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But that, I feel like that's what got you there. So why do they coach that out of a lot of people? And I feel that these days, a lot of young fellas don't practice like we used to practice. Like you said, we were at the park from sun up to sundown on weekends, and until it was dark on weekdays. No one does that these days, and that's why I feel like there's a shortage in players who can play off the cuff. So that's a little bit why we call it Game Changers, because we're just on the search. We're on the search for them fellas who can do them special things, like Jared Ain, like Benny Barber, like Matty Bowen.
Yeah, exactly right.
Sean Johnson on his day, those sort of fellas,
Yeah, look, there's still a time and place for it. You probably can't do it all the time. I think it comes down to coaching. I think coaches are more worried about not losing than they are winning. And as a result, I actually think all the coaching structures, all the shapes, all the moves, all the drills between the 17 clubs are so similar. It's crazy. I'm actually waiting for the next evolution of the game, that someone will do something different and then everyone will try and play catch up.
Yeah. Who've been the most surprising interviews on Unfiltered? Because you obviously know a lot of people and you got the contacts right to get them on. But when you get them on and you delve deeper, who've been some of the ones that have even surprised you with their story?
Two of them really spring to mind straight away. Mal Meninga, who I'm quite sure everyone that's watching the Game Changers knows all about. Mal is a really deep thinker, and he always has been a really deep thinker. And after he finished his football career, he really dug into who he was, where he was from, and his family. And it is years and years of work Mal put in, a lot of it thankless. But the first half hour of my interview with Mal, we don't even talk about footy. He talks about who he is, where he's from, how he got there. A terrific story. And a lot of our Legend Series interviews, you'll find out a lot about the man. We'll also talk footy, but their life interviews. The one that was the big surprise was Neil Pringle. Now, Neil Pringle was a Newtown Jet and a Balmain Tiger in the 1970s and early 80s in the old New South Wales Rugby League. And every kid in Sydney knew who Neil Pringle was. They wanted to be Neil Pringle. He was a real good footballer, really good off-the-cuff footballer. Neil has had significant and repeated and varied issues post-career that are horrific. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, just... just horrific. And I wasn't aware of the issues until they were basically raised when we were doing the interview. And we spent half the interview in tears, the pair of us. It is probably the best or most memorable interview I think I've done in 33 years, and something I'm really proud of.
Wow.
I got hundreds of messages from wives, from mothers, from grandfathers that didn't care less about rugby league, but just wanted to say thanks for sharing a human interest story. So yeah, I think Neil Pringle is worth a listen. And if you're a parent, I'll tell you what is a good one, a really good one, the Ben Hannond interview. Ben's the father of 8 kids, and that in itself is going to present challenges along the way. And Ben had the scariest and most the biggest nightmare a parent could ever experience. He had it early while he was playing, and Ben tells the story, and I promoted this episode as an episode that every parent should listen to, because the way him and Emma handled it, wow, terrific parenting, and the story blew me away, mate.
Yeah, right. What's the motivation behind the different series too, Andy? Like when I was down at Penrith, right? This is a true story too. Like I never realised, because we never watched a lot of the old legends like Lewis and Sterling, and like I was in the World Seven side in 03. Steve Ella was the coach, and Cliffy Lyons. I knew Cliffy Lyons, but I didn't know much about Steve Ella. And then you go back and you look at all of the great things that they did in them great teams. When we were at Penrith, Brett Kenny coached SG Ball when we were in flag. Now, had I known how good Brett Kenny was when I was there, I would have chewed his ear off.
Yeah.
I just love what he brought too, and I thought he was as good as Lewis in my opinion too. With the things that he brought. Yeah. So
that's one of the, mate. I think a lot of rugby league history has been forgotten, and I don't fill anyone's head full of stats, but I just relive the terrific memories in the words of the guys that created the memories, the Wally Lewises, the Mick Cronins, the Bob McCarthys, even through to, the early 1990s. In the early 90s, there was still only 2 games of footy a weekend on the TV. It was ABC on a Saturday and Channel 9.
Warren Boland?
Yeah, Warren Boland. So a lot of these guys, you didn't regularly see them. You might only see the Canberra Raiders 3 or 4 times a year. But there is a lifetime of stories there, and we relive them on the podcast.
So with the legends, have you got a spotlight 1 and 2, Andy?
Yeah. Got over the off season, we've done Dream Team, which has been terrific, where players name their best 13 or their best party 13, or the naughty 13. Spotlight is a really different one. It's 4 or 5 little short interviews about different things, all sort of put together. And the weekend session is, if you could invite 8 people over to your place for a weekend barbecue and drink, who would you invite and why? Some of the responses have been off the charts, really, really good. But we get into the season, and I do the Legends series, which is over 2 parts early in the week with a former superstar, and we've got some unbelievable names coming up this year. We do the Rugby League Super Pod every week on a Thursday. There's 12 short interviews every episode. It gets a little loose. It's fast. There's plenty of laughs, plenty of crap talk, plenty of footy talk. And we're going to continue on with the weekend session as well on the Saturday. So plenty to keep me busy. The big fella's frozen. Does that mean the time's up? On behalf of Game Changer, this is Andy Raymond saying goodbye. It is just me again.
No.
There he is, the big fella.
Far out, my Wi-Fi. Couple more, brother, and I'll let you go.
Easy.
Couple more and I'll let you go. You got me again?
Yep, certainly do.
So based on the trials, let's talk a little bit of footy. Are there any players that have excited you that you want to see more of, any of the young ones? And what about some of the established players as well that you think look pretty fit and you look forward to seeing them sort of turn it on a little bit? Or do you think they might have turned a corner as well,
It's going to be an interesting first 4 weeks. And I say that in the respect the World Cup went so late, it meant so many guys couldn't come back to training until January. So there's going to be plenty of guys that they're just underdone. And that's cool. I am super excited about Ezra Mam this year. I did an interview with him last week, and I could not be more impressed with the young bloke. He is a little superstar off the field. He realises his role in the Indigenous community. He realises, I think he just gets it, mate. He gets it. Yeah. Not everyone does. I think he gets it. So I'm looking forward to seeing Ezra Mam. Who else have we got? I'm looking forward to seeing the Eels back row and how that actually works. Matt Dory is a young bloke who came through Australian Schoolboys, Bulldogs junior system, did his knee and has been given an opportunity by Parramatta. I rate this young bloke so heavily, and I think on an edge with a little bit of quick service, he could be the buy of the year. I think he's a superstar in the making, Matt Dory. So keep your eye on him.
He played a lot of centre, didn't he, Andy? Played a lot of centre early on.
Bit of centre, bit of lock. He's played a little bit of six as well. He's bulked up and slowed down. So I think back row is probably just his go. And I'm looking forward to watching the Cowboys do their thing again. I really enjoyed their brand of footy last year, mate. I'm a fan of Scott Drinkwater. I'm a fan of Tom Dearden. Valentine Holmes was a class above last year. But I think, again, for us bigger fellas, I think it's going to be the big boys that I'm going to focus on. Griffin Neame for the Cowboys. Terrific, big, strong Nick Kosef or Adam Muir type guy for the Cowboys. I'm really looking forward to him. I think it's going to be a breakout year for Stefano Utoikamanu at the Tigers, who had an injury interrupted season last year. He showed signs of being anything. The injuries got him. And I just think with that forward pack around him this year, in particular a guy like David Clemmer, I think Stefano is going to be one to watch. So there's a handful, mate, that I'm excited about, but I will watch each and every game when it gets serious. I love the games. I love the ones that suck. I don't care. I'll still watch it.
I liked. I thought Mitchy Moses looked sharp.
Yep.
There was a young 5'8". I don't know if it was South Sydney or Manly. He scored a couple of tries in his first trial. Young 5'8". Like the kid at Katoa at Redcliffe.
Yes.
And that big winger looks like he's gonna be good down at Melbourne. They want to do something with him, or
Warbick, mate. He's a natural athlete, rugby sevens guy, and just looks like a big strong thing, doesn't he? Big strong tough thing.
Good finisher.
Yeah, absolutely.
Radradra sort of mould, Vunivalu sort of mould.
Yeah, very much so, mate. Very much.
In terms of the potty, Andy, before we wrap up, how do you generate for us little ones who, just do it for the love of it? I did it originally because I wanted to get my oldest boy, 17, he's a bit quieter than my youngest fellow, who's 12. So I wanted to try and get him out of his shell.
Yep.
But how do you generate a wage from it? You said you weren't real good with the tech stuff off air. So who does all that sort of stuff for you, brother? How many hours sort of do you put into it?
It's me. I'm lucky enough to have my wife that if I run into a tech issue, she'll point me in the right direction because she's pretty switched on. But mate, it's me. I'm writing, I'm editing, I'm producing, I'm doing the social media. It just continues. It doesn't stop. Because you can always do social media. I'm really lucky that I've got a couple of good sponsors on board and a couple of new ones coming on board that see the value in being associated with the brand and the benefits that they'll get. So big year ahead, mate. A lot of work, but big year.
So do you do up like sponsorship things, or do they like contact you directly and ask you?
It's a combination of both. I've had a few companies contact me. I've had a few companies that I've turned down because I didn't think the fit was right. And sometimes that's the case. It'd be really easy to say yes to everyone, but you're probably doing yourself a disservice. But we've got a sponsorship pack out, and that's been sent out, and the response has been terrific. And looking forward to welcoming a few new corporate sponsors and supporters and friends onto the podcast for the year ahead, mate.
Nice. Boxing before I let you go. Yeah, I love the fights too. Love watching you. Been watching a lot of the guys over in the US. Obviously, if you're into boxing, is Spence and Crawford finally going to fight? Like is Haney, and you got Shakur Stevenson and Teofimo Lopez and all these guys in that one division. What are some of the biggest fights you've covered over the years, and who were some of your favourite fighters of yesteryear?
Of yesteryear, I used to love the middleweights of the 1980s. Roberto Duran, Thomas Hearns, Marvin Hagler, Sugar Ray Leonard. I mean, the four of them just phenomenal. They're Hall of Famers, they're icons, they're legends. That's what got me into boxing. Of the fights that I've covered, I mentioned Danny Green and Roy Jones earlier, but there has been so many fights, and this is the beauty of boxing. You don't have to have a world title on the line to make it a good fight. It doesn't have to be in the biggest venue to make it a good fight. You just need two blokes that want to throw hands. And if a fight's matched properly and well, buckle up, because it's sensational. And mate, there has been hundreds of wars that I've commentated over the years. Guys that you wouldn't know, that you wouldn't have heard of, that have just gone berserk on that night and created a little bit of Australian sporting history. So, mate, it's probably the smaller shows, the Leagues Club or RSL Club, the smaller venues where two battlers get in and have a crack. That's what I love.
How do they engage you? Is it the promoters or is it the production company? Like,
it was Fox. I was contracted to Fox, so I was doing the fights with Fox. But since then, it's the production company and or the promoters that ring in and see if I'm interested and see if we can, come to an agreement.
Of the current batch of Australian boxers, who were some of the ones that you love watching or we should keep an eye out for?
Well, the obvious ones, but Liam Paro's a young Queenslander who recently beat Brock Jarvis. Both of them were undefeated. The fight was the end of last year up here in Brisbane. Paro won it. He's fighting next weekend, I think, in the UK. Very talented little fella, and only a little fella, but very talented little fella. Dempsey McKean, a heavyweight, is over there at the moment training in the UK. Another one. Some really good young fighters that have been guided really well. I look forward to it.
On a global scale, who do you like watching? I love Boots Ennis. He's one of my faves.
Yeah.
And hopefully he gets a crack. A lot of people think he's not ready for Crawford or Spence or Virgil Ortiz Jr. I like as well. You know, knockout artist, 18-0, 18 KOs, I think. Who were some of the fellas you look at on a global scale and you like the looks of?
I was a massive Golovkin fan for a long time and just thought he was indestructible there for a while. I enjoy Crawford. I enjoy Spence. I don't enjoy the bullshit that they go on with a lot of the time. I've seen all the self-promotion. It's a bit of a wank, but they do what they do. I more enjoy just when they get in the ring as opposed to the build-up. But again, if a fight's evenly matched and well matched, I'll support just about any fighter or any promotion if it's done properly.
You know a lot of these sort of people, Andy. Like, is it the fact that the promoters just won't take the risk, or is it the fighters that don't have the belief, or is it a combination of both?
Combination of both. It's a combination of both. There are some fighters out there that talk a big game in Australia and have a history of pulling out, and that's the fighter and the trainer. There's some promoters that have got a history of pulling out but talking a good game. So I get it, but I think we fill these young kids' heads full of dreams that you're good enough to be a world champion. You're a world champion. Don't worry about the Australian title. Don't worry about the Queensland title. Well, someone's also got to say that to the promoters and the trainers, you should be proud to be a state champion or an Australian champion, and don't fill the kid's head full of shit because he's not a world champion. And so many times we have seen a young Aussie boxer at 15 or 16 or 25, 26 and 0 go overseas and get absolutely belted, and then he's never heard of again. That's sad. That's sad.
Do you think Zoo can mix it with Harrison? Harrison's the only fella who beat Charlo.
Tough ass, Sean. Real tough ass. Everything about Tim Zoo has been impressive. If anyone has had any doubts, he's negated those doubts with some terrific performances. But this is a step up, mate. This is a serious step up. I won't be betting on this one, put it that way.
Yeah. Who was your mentor in the field and someone you most admired, and why, brother?
Really lucky to have a number of mentors in my Channel 7 days, which was 1990 to 1996, 97, early 97. They all treated me terrifically. They're guys and girls whose names you probably wouldn't know. Very professional, very skilled, an amazing group of guys that could produce and do anything on television, and they all helped me. And there must be 20, 25 of them, and they've all left a little imprint. So really, really fortunate, mate. I was taught by the best in the land, basically. No excuses.
In media circles, is there one event that stands out above the rest that everyone wanted to be on? Like you look at, in sporting circles, you look at the Super Bowl. What was the Super Bowl for you fellas as media personnel, brother?
Everyone liked to do the tours. I can tell you that, the long tours overseas, especially the Kangaroo tours or the World Cup tours, they were always fun. And weren't they fun? But no, mate, everyone loves the big events, and it doesn't matter if you're a competitor, member of the media, or a fan. The bigger the event, the more excited you get, and the more you wanted it, to be a part of it. And luckily, thankfully, or however you want to put it, I've certainly had my share, and very, very grateful for it.
Is there one fella that, or as a media personality, right? Like as a footballer, we look at players and we think that they got to possess certain skills, and who's got it and who hasn't. What do you fellas look at in media and judge them on how far up the pecking order or up the tree they are? What are some of the things that you look at?
Yeah, I think natural ability, being natural,
Yeah,
being honest, knowing when to shut your mouth.
yeah,
It's really easy to fall into the trap that you've got to keep talking on television. You've got to keep talking on radio because you don't have any pictures. So radio, you got to keep talking. But on television, like, the stars of the show are the boxers or the footballers or the AFL players or the cricketers, whoever it is. They're the stars, and
yeah,
you don't have to explain everything in commentary. You don't have to explain everything verbally. So knowing when to shut your mouth and knowing when to open your mouth again is it takes time,
yeah.
but gee, it's important. But so too as being an individual and being yourself. And you might take a few traits from others, but you still got to be yourself.
How with all of the interviews that you get, right, and I mentioned this off the top, you're obviously well respected by the players, and that came across from watching you over the years. How do you stay connected with a lot of the players, or even make new connections with the guys that you haven't met before? Is that just through word of mouth, or you got contacts at different clubs?
No, I think most of it's just word of mouth, and a lot of the young ones that are starting their footballing journey now, watched me since they were 5 years old on the TV, so they recognise the ugly bald head straight away. But mate, I keep in touch as best we can, and there are guys that I caught up with Matty Ballin last week, and I haven't sat down and had a chat with Matty Ballin for 5 years, and it was like nothing had changed. It was seriously like nothing had changed. And it will probably be another 5 years before I sit down with him again, and it doesn't matter. And there is a heap of guys like that. Everyone goes in their different direction. Everyone's got families and other responsibilities. We don't need to live in each other's pockets to be mates, but they know they can call me whenever they need something, and I feel the same.
Yeah. Proudest moment of your career? Last question as we finish up.
Proudest moment of my career has been establishing the Unfiltered brand of the podcast, because it's been me and me only. And if it was going to work, it was going to be a reflection of the time and the diligence that I put in. And if it was going to fail, it was going to be on me. So probably not the answer you're expecting, but I'm super proud of what we've been able to achieve in a pretty short time.
Again, what's the best little bit of advice you could give any aspiring journos and that too, brother? We always do with the players. What's the best bit of advice?
Be yourself. Be honest. Be loyal. Pretty much the same things that I grew up on, and they're personal values of mine. Being honest, being loyal, being yourself. But also push. If you want to get into podcasting, or you want to get into rugby league commentary or sports commentary or journalism, there's a lot of people out there that want to do exactly the same thing. You've got to be a little bit different. Your approach has got to be a bit different. But most of all, you've got to be keen. You've got to be willing to do anything. You've got to start at the bottom, but let them know that you will start at the bottom and you will do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Keep knocking on the door. Keep knocking on the door, and hopefully one day one of those doors opens.
Best bit of advice you've ever been given, brother? I know it was a buy.
Dad, be yourself.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
That sums it up.
On that note, brother, I really appreciate you coming on, Andy. Reached out to a lot of guys just on, like socials, and a lot of them obviously busy and probably got different people that handle their account and sort of don't get back. But I appreciate you getting straight back, brother, and agreeing to come on something like this. It's only a little small one, but, we've got our own little audience as well. So they'll take a lot out of this. I've definitely taken a lot out of it, because I was one of them fellas who watched you since I was a young fella on the sidelines, and and probably irk me into trying to do something like this myself, brother. So appreciate it again for getting back and come on a little show like this.
My pleasure, Sean. It's been a cracking hour. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Once we get your Wi-Fi fixed, we'll do it all again at some stage. Legend.
Definitely, brother. I might see you out and about at the footy, eh?
Look forward to it, mate.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it. All right, guys. Andy Raymond there. Episode 3 of season 2 down. Next week, got a big one. Tentatively locked in Georgie Rose from No Limit Boxing on Tuesday night because he's got a fight night on Wednesday. On the Wednesday next week, we've got Ryan Hoffman, former Melbourne Storm, New South Wales Blues, and Australian Kangaroo rep. So it'll be a good little week next week as well. Hopefully we can get Georgie on the Tuesday night, but we've definitely got Ryan Hoffman on the Wednesday night. Thanks for watching again tonight. We'll see you all next week, eh?